Is this thing on? I think it is. All right. Hey, everybody. My name is Derek, and I am the owner, creator, and head silicone slinger here at Amavidi, where we make silicone toys for adults. All right. I got to get my speakers turned off. There we go. Now I can do this without an echo. So, this is a second try for today. This is kind of the fallback position. We had Fergus Monster booked for this afternoon, but we couldn't get a stable connection. So yeah, we're kind of struggling there, and we just decided to call it, and we'll rebook that in the future. I have a tentative date, but I don't want to put it out there just yet, just in case things go awry. Now then, you might have noticed we have a Patreon. You can support us that way, or you can just hang out and watch. I really don't care. You can do what you like. But yeah, we have a Patreon. That is patreon.com/Amavidi, and you can join us and support us in any way you like. So I'm flying solo tonight. I have no guest. I have no George. I'm hoping this is not a train wreck, but it could be. So yeah, come along for the ride. And I think what I'm going to do, it's going to be fairly quick tonight, just because I don't have a guest and I can't carry a conversation for that long just by myself. But I think there are a few things that I've got in the cooker that I want to mention and get some feedback on. And you're more than welcome to drop comments into the chat. I have it over here someplace, and I'm hoping I can keep up with it. But, well, we'll see. Oh, there's George. She is still at auditions. Yes. I didn't want to give it all away, but she is auditioning for a show, and hopefully they called her back for callbacks same night. So that's a good thing. Now then, let's see. Things I wanted to mention is things that we've got coming up. I am working on, let's see, I've got about 5 videos that are edited. I just need to record the voiceover on. I've got a book that I'm working on for how to do silicone toys from start to finish, including all the businessy stuff, like the accounting and the stuff that's in the the stuff that we don't like to think about. I think I've got about 20,000 words on that so far. I figure probably going to be another 10 to 15,000 words, so that's probably about halfway done. I'm also working on a course so that folks who are not readers can learn how to make silicone toys and do it safely. And that would actually be something that is video, as well as, there would be PDFs and documents to go along with it. But it would actually be video that they can follow along on, and they can actually, I don't know, I've got some ideas there, and maybe that would allow for some people to use me as a resource as they're getting started. I had this really weird idea for like a 60-day crash course where people could sign up, and they would get all of the equipment necessary, all the supplies, and then we would do like twice a week sessions where folks could, number one, we'd have a teaching session, and then a session where people could ask questions and dive deep into things. So Ben says, I really like the last buy flag and don't cheap out on your tools lesson. Yeah, that was actually the last one I did. And a little bit different format also. I'm kind of experimenting with things, trying to figure out how I want to get my videos to go. But that was a fun one. I enjoyed that one. And there's actually an experiment going on. You may or may not have seen it, but there's actually 2 different versions of that video. One is a little bit more laid back and subdued, while the other one is a little bit more energetic. It has a music background, or music in the background, and the voiceover is a little bit more energetic. But there is a version that is a little bit more chill and low-key. And I'm curious which one is going to do better over time. So yeah. George is in the chat. I'm sure she's going to be stirring things up as she go. Reading for callbacks, so I can't be that bad. Yeah. Let's see. So I was talking about, I've got the videos that are recorded. I just need to do voiceovers for. I've got about 50, somewhere between 50 and 75 YouTube shorts that are edited, and I just need to drop music onto. I've got a book that I'm working on. I've got a course that I'm working on. I mean, there's a lot of things going on in the background. I've got the weekly show. Did you know there's a podcast version of this also? Yeah. I will throw a link someplace. I post them on, post links to the podcast on Twitter as well. So if you just follow me on Twitter, you'll find them. They usually go up on Monday or Tuesday, something like that. So let's see. If you have any questions, drop them into the chat, and I will get to them as I go along. So let's see. What else do I want to get into? What did you have? What questions do you have? Oh, there's one other thing I'm working on. I want to do panel discussions. I want to get like three other makers on and do like panel discussions about topics. Like the first one I want to talk about is like Etsy, and whether somebody should start out on Etsy or not, whether Etsy is evil. And I have my opinions, but I know that there are others. So I'm curious about how a panel discussion would go. And I'm thinking like, maybe, I don't know, we could do that once a month, something like that. After Dark asks, have you ever forgotten to spray your molds with release, and how did you fix or just scrap the entire mold? I have forgotten. Honestly, I don't have any problems. I do a very light spray on my molds, just a very light, before every pour. And it just kind of seasons the mold a little bit. And if I forget to once, it doesn't really matter. So I haven't really had that problem. The one time I have had problems is when I've had molds stick to my masters. And that is a horrible day. But because you pretty much have to trash the mold and the master and start over. But as far as like molds, one of my employees did have a problem. There was a part of the mold that he couldn't get the mold release into, and when he pulled it was a very small spot just behind the head of the toy, and when he pulled it, part of the toy stayed behind, and then yeah, that mold was toast. But I haven't had that problem. My employees had. Yeah, older mold, if you forget once in a while, no issues. If it's a new mold, you can. Yeah, the really bad one for me is if I double up on part A instead of adding part A and part B. That pretty much destroys my molds. I just haven't found a really good way of cleaning them. So... Oh, Ben says, I learned early on to try and season the outside of your molds as well with release, just in case you get a little bit of silicone on the outside. Yeah, that mold release spray is kind of messy, so it gets all over the place. Warm Inside says, Etsy is evil-ish. I would agree with you. I mean, generally speaking, I will tell people that Etsy is a great place to start. But it can be problematic as you go along unless you plan for it. I think there are some ways of using Etsy to be a source of income for you, but not create problems for you in the future. And I think it takes just a little bit of planning, but you can do that. What else? Questions? Yeah, I want to do panel discussions. And I'm curious if there are any topics that you would like to have, like me and Shop Dad and Tibbs from Fantasy Grove and who else could we get? Oh, Funkit. Kenton from Funkit would be a fun one to get like all of us together and have that discussion. I think that could be fun. But then how often do you do it as well? Do you do it once a month? How often? I don't know. All right. I did have a tech run through with Felicity from Failophile this weekend. And we spent some time talking about her episode, which is coming up. I should probably look that up and let you know when that is going to be, because I think that is going to be a fun one. There's a whole lot of history there, and there's a whole lot of knowledge that people would really benefit from. Yeah, Failophile is scheduled for October 9th right now. And on October 2nd, we've got Linda from Paladin Pleasures. And next weekend, we have Kisu and Friends. That was one that we had to rebook because of weather issues, I believe. So, Maggie Space asks, do you have a favorite piece in your collection? I'm assuming you collect as well as make. I am not a collector. I'm a maker. So if there's something that I want, I'll make it. I don't have a collection. That might be a little bit weird. I came into this from a slightly different category. I came into this from the resin casting area, and then I kind of learned that this could be done, and then I made that transition into making. But I was never a collector, which I think probably surprises folks a little bit. And then Fiona here. Fiona has something to say. She's not happy. Yeah, she's never happy. But we had a good pre-show tech run with Felicity from Failophile this weekend, and I'm really looking forward to that conversation. DIY punk ethic in redacted making. Mad respect. Okay, I'm guessing that something got edited there, censored. Yeah, it is kind of a DIY punk thing. I figured that, if there's something that I want, then I should probably make it. And who better to know exactly what I want than me? So, but Felicity is going to be a really interesting question, or a really interesting conversation. We have one of the things that we're going to talk about is her huge, in-depth study of lubricants. And there's so much science in that we're trying to figure out how we can have that conversation and keep it from getting overwhelming. So Maggie censors her own messages. Okay. When I realized I could get the stream in trouble. Speaking of stream getting in trouble, I did get banned from Twitch. I got a 3-day ban. I'm not sure why. I appealed it. They haven't done anything about it. But Twitch banned me for 3 days. YouTube doesn't care. It doesn't bother them at all. I've only had a couple of my videos get tagged as 18 plus. So YouTube is a great place for us. I have heard of people that do have problems with it, though. Warm Inside, how do you keep your various businesses separate? Because they are very different. I have the Silicone side. I have a gaming supply side, tabletop games, and then I have a Pride collection that I do. So they're very different and very separate. As far as accounting goes, all of that income comes in very specific ways. And so I'm able to automate that. And when it goes to my accountant, it automatically gets broken out into income from this, or that. And it's actually not too hard. especially when they're so different. But I do draw some very hard lines. I mention that I do resin casting, and I mention that tabletop gaming, but you've never seen anything that I do. And there's a reason for that, because I do keep them very separate. So, Maggie Space. I usually go for cheap water-based flavored lube. Water-based. I don't have any indie toys yet, sadly. Water-based lubes are great. They are really not going to cause you any problems at all as far as toys go. Hybrid and silicone lubes can cause you problems with silicone toys in some cases, but not all. And they're perfectly fine with glass and steel. So, yeah, water-based lubes are great. There are some things about them, depending on, and this is something that Felicity and I are going to have talk about, is some of the things about water-based lubes include their osmolality. Osmolality, I think that's the right word, which has to do with their tendency to draw water in. I think I'm getting that right, because there's a concept here where a lube, which might be water-based, may actually absorb moisture, which is not what you want from a toy, because you want to be adding moisture. Also, depending on, especially when you're going with flavors, some of the additives might have sugars in them, which for some people can cause issues. There's so many different things about that, because you've got the pH, you've got the osmolality, you've got the level of sugar in them, or Fiona's done. There's so many different things in there that could be problematic, and most people don't realize that. And I'm hoping that we can actually get a really good conversation that a lot of people learn a lot of things from. More honestly, I'm broke, so spit is usually useful. However, more importantly, silicone lube scares me. Silicone lubes, as long as it's not with a silicone toy, you shouldn't have any problems with. Yeah, sugars are not your friend down there. That is absolutely correct. So, I am. How do I put this? Because I don't want to get too specific and too graphic, but yeah, and it's not necessarily even specifically sugars, but glucose derivatives that can cause problems as well. Yeah. Oh, I did have somebody comment that the music was too loud in the past, so I've kind of adjusted that, and hopefully it's not too obnoxious. So anything else? I'm kind of freeform tonight. It's more of an AMA. It's more of a get to know me kind of thing. If there's anything you'd like to ask about toy making or the industry or anything like that, one of the things I've thought about doing, and you have to tell me what you think of this. What if I did reviews of other makers' toys? Ooh, that could get spicy. Yeah, I think I thought about it, but I don't know, because are they competition? I don't think they're competition, but it could be interesting way of looking at them. So yeah. May or may not be adding flavors given the time, or may not be able to. Yeah. Reviews sound amazing. Yeah, I think it could be fun. Yeah, there's a lot to balance there, though, so I don't know if I could do it very well. All right. I'll probably keep it fairly short tonight. I'm going to say one last thing and then probably wrap it up. I don't know if anybody knows, but whenever somebody does, like Felicity and I were talking this weekend, and she asked about if I ever had been interviewed about how I got started and all this kind of stuff. And I actually, I explained to her that I actually do a lot more live streaming besides the Sunday live stream shows. I do probably 2 a week, anywhere from 1 to 2 a week during the day when I'm actually pouring and doing custom orders. Because whenever anybody orders a custom toy from me, whenever I have their pour scheduled, I actually will email them and let them know when I'm going to be doing their pour and give them a link to the live session so that they can actually see their toy being made. And yeah, that's something that a lot of people don't know, is that if you do a custom with me, you will get to see your toy being made, and it'll actually be on the YouTube channel for a while before it gets taken down. But yeah. After Dark Creations, that would be awesome. You gave me great advice on mine. Yeah, I think I remember that one. There were a couple of things that I pointed out that could have been problematic. And I think that you're on the right track with that design. I think it could be a really good one, really fun one. Just keep an eye on some of those things that I pointed out. And I don't mean to be like completely obtuse to everybody else, but when we're pouring and we're designing toys, there are certain limitations that we have to work within in order to get a result that is viable, that's not going to have bubbles, that's not going to have issues. And having done this for some amount of time, I can usually see those issues before they pop up and before we get too far into the development process. So maybe when I get my shop up, you could take one of my creations for a try and review. Note, a lot of them will be fantasy, furry, and sci-fi, so I hope knots aren't an issue. I think that if I did reviews, it would be much more about the technical aspects of it, not necessarily the in-use aspects of it, because that's very subjective. I can be very objective about certain things. If there are bubbles, if there are pigment clumps, if there is texture or not, those things I can point out and I can be very objective about. But things like whether or not a knot is okay is very subjective, so I would leave that to people to make their own judgment on. Reviews are super helpful. This is from Muffin. Reviews are super helpful, even if it's a negative one, because it didn't work for you personally. It can still give useful information for those it could work for. It's funny you mentioned that, because when I have my designs that I'm working on and I send them out to my testers, I send them out to everybody, even the folks that I know it's not going to be something that they would enjoy. Because, number one, they may come back with comments that help me make it better for them. Number two, they may find something that they didn't know that they would like. And so that is something that we're always balancing. So I'm always open to positive and negative. So I send it out to folks, even if it's not, even if I know it's not right for what they like. Yeah, Megaspace. So like marbling design. Yeah, I'm going to be looking at the more objective parts of it. That if I did reviews, I would be looking at things like the marbling, the shape, the size, what techniques they used in the production of it, the surface, whether it has a matte surface on it or a glossy surface on it. Any issues that might be problematic for some people. There are some additives that are problematic because they have nut issues. People with nut allergies can have issues with certain additives, and those are things that need to be understood if that's something that is a part of that toy. So yeah. Ben says, I'd be super down for technical reviews like that. I'd be willing to send one in. Awesome. If I do that, I'll let people know. I've seen them done on other crafting categories, and it's very interesting because folks can have a different perspective. So Maggie asking, how do you become a tester? I have a very specific group of people that I send my testing products to. I do know that some makers have, I was going to say they have openings for testers, but that's a little bit, that's not quite the right word. They have spots available for testers. I think that if you work with and you contact and you get in touch with and you are very supportive of a particular maker, they may consider taking you on as a tester. But it's a very interesting category and conversation to have when you have to be very graphic and very specific about things. And not everybody can do that. So Ben asks, we talking about that surface tension reducer from Smooth On regarding nut allergies? Yes, it's Slide STD. I'll put that in the chat. Ooh, Amber Murphy asking, what kind of additive would have nut allergies? This one is called Slide STD, and it changes the texture of the surface. There's one company, I think it's called Blissful Creations. They make sleeves and extenders, and they use the Slide STD in their mix. And so it changes the surface feel. It changes it from, I don't know how to describe it. Some people say it makes it more realistic, but it does come with an issue with nut allergens. Maggie, I have a few friends I plan to make into a test group, so that's covered for me. Yeah. As long as they can give you good feedback and be graphically honest with you, then that's awesome. Nut allergies. Yeah, there's a pun there that could be made. Is there anything like Slide STD that doesn't have an allergy risk? Ooh. I don't know of anything. I think that the texture of the toy is going to make a big difference in that, whether it is a matte finish or a glossy finish. They're each going to have their own texture. Matte finish is going to drag a little bit more. It's going to have a little bit more friction, whereas a glossy surface is going to slide a little bit more. Shopdad had told me in his trials with it, silicone actually broke down after 1 to 2 years. That's interesting. I would be curious to see. Yeah, I'm going to have to talk to Shopdad about that one, see if we can figure out why that's happening. I think I need to make samples with different percentages of slides, store them for a while, and see how that plays out. Yeah, I think that's one way of doing it. If you do that, you might try to accelerate the wear and tear on it by putting it into like a tumbler, something like, you know, what they use for polishing rocks, kind of a rock tumbler thing. You might try doing something like that where you can accelerate the wear so that it doesn't take, 1 to 2 years to figure that out. So, what else have you got for me? Finally a use for my rock tumbler that I bought and never used. Yeah, I have one too. I actually have a big vibratory tumbler as well that I got for, well, I want to do some metal work as well. And I still haven't gotten a chance to use that yet. Maggie's talking about how to save some silicone, maybe work it in your hands. Yeah, and then saying that I have a better idea. Yeah, I think that's a great way of kind of accelerating the wear and tear on it. Ooh, Ben, for dice polishing, I've had my eye on doing some dice. I'd be curious what made you get out of that category? What made you decide to leave the dice scene? I'd be curious about that. By the way, actually, I'll throw this out there. If there's anybody that wants to jump on as a voice guest, then let me know, and I will send you a link that you can jump on with, and maybe we could do something like that. That could be interesting. I don't know. That could be scary. I have no idea what people would say. It'd be like a call-in show, one of those late night call-in shows. And you get those questions from folks and the story of their love life. Oh, yeah. Maggie, voice dysphoria is awful. Yeah, I don't think anybody likes their voice. Nobody likes to hear what their voice sounds like outside of their head. But there are voice training processes that people can use to develop the voice in the direction that they want to. Oh, Ben, your spouse took over the dice, and now you just make the molds when I get the time. Yeah, that's a category I've been looking at. Like I said, I do a lot of tabletop gaming accessories. So dice is a category I've been looking at getting into. I do resin casting. It's just not for dice. I've got the pressure pots. I've got vacuum chambers. I've got all the stuff that I need. I just need to make the molds and figure out if that's the direction I want to go. Mormon side. How can a maker decide what is going too far for a toy? I think the answer to that is as long as I don't want to say there are no boundaries because that sounds weird, but I've seen some incredibly large toys. I think it's Mr. Hanky does some really large toys. I've seen some really long toys. So, length or width is one of those things that is very subjective. I think as long as it does what you intend it to do, then it's right. I don't know if that answers the question, but I think that there really isn't, I hate saying that, but I really don't think there are limits or boundaries that would be wrong. Now, I think that if you're going for something that could be used for butt stuff, then you obviously have to account for a neck and a base. But if it's anything beyond that, I don't know that it would be too many issues. Oh yeah, try to avoid putting a working firearm in the toy. That is an excellent suggestion. Let's see, I had an idea for a Cyclops that sits in your shelf and looks like art. Then you take the eye out and have a stroker. Oh, okay. Yeah. That becomes kind of functional art. And that is a great category to be in because now you've kind of separated yourself from just the toy market and you've become functional art. And I actually like that idea. Hmm. And then what if you turned that into an ovipositor? You could take the eye out of the Cyclops, and then it could be an ovipositor. Hmm. That's an interesting idea. Never thought I'd use... Oh, who is that? Moby Huge, for example, should show the boundaries can be pushed. Yeah. Who is that? Is it Mr. Hanky? Who is that does the giant plugs? Sorry. I am curious. I've got to figure out who that is. Mr. Hanky's Toys. Yeah. They're the ones that can go super large, impressively large in a sense. And who makes the Slink? I'm trying to remember who makes the Slink. Square Peg, that's the other one. Square Peg does a lot of big toys. The Slink is one of them, and the Acorn. I mean, look at the elephant baby, or the baby elephant. I mean, I've even seen like the traffic cones. I've seen toys that are shaped like traffic cones. So, I mean, I really don't know if there are any limits. I think the limits become what people want. So, yeah, nothing stabby. Yes, I absolutely have to agree with that. I think that's a really good point in understanding the materials and the shape, that if you're using something that is on the firmer end of the spectrum, then making sure that you don't have something that is too pokey would be a great thing to do. Every time somebody mentions oviposition, I remember the cursed dream I had where somebody was selling ovipositor toys, but the eggs actually started hatching. Oh man, that would be a horrible nightmare. Horrible nightmare. What else was there? I need to check and see. Did anybody actually send me any messages that they wanted to jump on the stream or not? Don't see that. Okay. Well, that's fine. I'll figure something out. I wanted to do an ovipositor, but I haven't. It hasn't floated to the top of my list yet. I'm curious as to how large a toy that you have made. When would it become necessary to make split molds? I'm looking towards a girth of 10 centimeter diameter or bigger. Star Fox, how you doing? Let me take my glasses off. Let's see here. Actually, as far as when to use a split mold, I actually think that the larger the toy, the more that a glove mold is more appropriate. I think that split molds or block molds are more appropriate for smaller toys. A girth of 10 centimeters in diameter, that's about 4 inches. Yeah, I would. And the thing is that if you're going to be doing something that large, you would want to, if you did a glove mold, which is the direction I would go, you would want to make a mother mold using either plaster or maybe 3D printing a shell to go along with it. I'm really a sucker for glove molds. I really think that they make things a lot easier. And also something that large is also going to be fairly soft. So I think that you could go either way. Block mold with something that large, if it were soft enough, it could come out. Because that's what I'm worried about, is how you would get it out of the mold. And also the shape matters. If it's if you're thinking about doing a plug or something like that that has a neck on it, and that would be very difficult to get out of a block mold. If it's more cone shaped, then either a block mold or a glove mold. But when I can, I always suggest a glove mold. Star Fox, doing well, thanks. Yeah, great. We've got folks on here that I haven't seen before, and that's what's interesting to me, is that sometimes when I do these, I don't always get a chance to see the chat, but we've got folks in here that I haven't had a chance to talk to or seen on the chat before, and that is awesome. Was there anything in the... Nope. Okay. What else have you got for me? I'll give you a second to type it into the chat, because I'm going to plug my Patreon real quick. Patreon.com/Amavidi is where you can support us. I think I've got a $3 level at this point. I think there's one that's really inexpensive. So if you enjoy what we do, then you can jump over to patreon.com/Amavidi and support us that way. Oh, we did hit a milestone this week. We had 100,000 views on YouTube. Lifetime views. We hit 100,000 views on our videos on YouTube, which was just crazy. It blows my mind to think that people are actually watching what I do. And yeah. Ben asking, just curious if you prefer resin versus FDM printing and your preferred method of getting the printed surface finished. Something like XTC 3D. Some hate it, use filler. Okay. I will go with FDM prints anytime I can. Resin, I've had a lot of experiences with resin where it caused cure inhibition when I was doing my molds, and that's problematic. I hate XTC 3D. I've never gotten a good surface out of it. When it comes to finishing, I like to use a surface primer and then do any polishing that I want to do. And then if I'm going for, and this is something I've been experimenting with, and I did a little bit of experiments, but I need to go back and get some more materials. Mod Podge. Let's see, I'll put that in the chat. Mod Podge gloss or matte. I've been very surprised at how well Mod Podge gloss or matte spray, and that's the spray finish. I've been very surprised at how well those work. Ben, yes, the Mod Podge are go-tos. Those are great. And let's see. Another process you're asking about post-processing. I have been experimenting with a different way of doing it. I don't know if I would teach people this method. I think it's a great way of doing it, but I don't know if I would teach it to anybody. Basically, I start off with a FDM 3D print, and then I make without doing any post-processing on it, I make a glove mold of that. And then I pour a plaster master from that mold. And I think it's called Matrix Drive. I think that's what it's called. I'll put it in the chat. Matrix Drive. And yes, it does have multiple eyes in it, I think. Matrix Drive. It's from Smooth On, or Reynolds carries it, but it's a plaster. And I have FDM print, make a mold of the FDM print, pour a plaster master, then do finishing on the plaster, because plaster actually sands really nicely and it finishes very nicely, and then do whatever your finish is that you want on the final master from the plaster master. I've done that a couple of times. I've been really happy with the results. I don't know that I would teach it to people just because it's multiple steps, and I don't know that everybody would have the patience for it. But I've been really surprised at how well that worked. Where was that? Star Fox. My concern would be if there was a neck, would the mold break? If you have a glove mold, you would be surprised at how much that would stretch. And if you had a block mold, you would be surprised at how hard it is to get something with a neck on it out of a block mold. So those are my thoughts there. How to make a nuke-shaped plug that's actually safe to use for the whole Fallout thing. I gotta... When you say nuke-shaped, are you talking about like the fat... What was it? Fat Man and Little Boy? Or... Yeah, from World War II, that kind of shape. I'm trying to remember, I thought I saw somebody who did something like that. Also, think about the fact that you don't necessarily have to be 100% authentic to the idea, as long as you get the concept right, and you can evoke the idea of what it is that you're trying to show in your toy. Proud of you. Yeah, I was really impressed. I say impressed with myself. 100,000 views. It's just crazy. We have over 1,300 followers, or 1,300 subscribers on the YouTube channel. I think probably today or tomorrow we're going to cross 5,000 watch hours. People have spent 5,000 hours watching what I do. It just blows my mind. One of my videos has something like 30,000 views on it by itself. So yeah, it's kind of amazing. Mod Podge, matte and sprays are my go-to for final finishing, says Ben. Yep, I'm with you there. Oh, that's an interesting comment. Maggie, I don't want to subconsciously steal parts of the design. Yeah, it's hard to not take ideas and subconsciously work them into your designs. But as long as I think you're conscious that you could do that, you're not going to have any problems. I actually tried that. Made a 3D printed mold out of TPU, poured in plaster, and tried to finish that. Need to revisit it. Yeah. It's a labor-intensive process, but I really like the results of it. And you end up with a very solid plaster master. If you do vapor smoothing on ABS, then it really does create some very uneven stresses within the 3D print, and usually within 6 months to a year they'll crack and they'll break. So having a plaster master really is durable. So it's I really like the idea, but I don't know that I would teach everybody that. FDM with a light sanding and a 24-hour epoxy top coat. Yeah, I think that Shop Dad was talking about that. He had a 24-hour epoxy. It was like a bar top finishing epoxy, and the cure time on it was so long and the pot life on it was so long that it made it really easy to get a really good master out of it, just for the simple fact that you didn't have to worry about bubbles, because with a 2-hour pot life, all the bubbles are going to come to the surface. And so yeah, Shop Dad loves his 24-hour epoxies. Like the early American nukes. So yeah, you're talking about the World War II Fat Man and Little Boy. One of them was very long and skinny. The other one was very round, almost egg-shaped. So you've got some room to play there. Even going back into, go up into like the more modern nukes, that the warheads on those are a little bit more cone-shaped. So you've got a lot of room to play there. Velvet Alley's Atom Splitter. Okay, yeah, yeah. Vapor smoothing bothered me for cracking and crazing it caused with prints. Yeah, yeah. As weird is that it is caused by a difference in stresses, because as you're vapor smoothing that, you've got parts of it that are melting and then re-solidifying, while other parts never melted, and so you've got this tension inside that causes them to want to break. Modern nukes just like a really big toy. Yeah, yeah. Just now start getting into ASA filaments. Yeah, ASA is great. It's another one of those that you can vapor smooth with acetone, but it's a lot easier to print than ABS. Fiona is not happy today. It's almost her dinner time, so. Melted your printer's mounting brackets when you first tried printing ASA. Is it really that hot? I think it was around 280 degrees, 260 degrees Fahrenheit, something like that. You know, ABS prints at much higher temperatures than that. I think you're pushing like 350, 400 on ABS, but I could be wrong. So for ASA, brand matters. I love Prusa. I'll put that in the chat. Prusa makes their Prusa Mint, and that's their FDM filaments. I have never found a better FDM filament than Prusa Mint. So it's oh yeah, and yeah, ABS needs to be printed in an enclosure. Yeah, but Prusa makes their Prusa Mint FDM filaments. I've never found a better filament for 3D printing than the Prusa Mint. It's expensive, and you're going to pay shipping from Prague. I can't remember if it's Prague or Poland. Prague is in the Czech Republic. Either Prague or Poland. I think it's Poland. Anyway, you'll be paying for shipping internationally. So you just have to make sure that you put together a big enough order that it evens out. But you're going to end up paying $30 to $40 per roll for Prusa Mint. But it's just so good. It prints so smoothly. So, all right. I'm going to do last call for questions. And then here at the top of the hour, I'm going to bail. Ran a little bit longer than I expected to, but the questions are just so good. I love having the questions. I wish I could have more like a conversation like that, you know, those late night talk call-in shows. But so coming up, we have, let me pull up my list here. Next weekend, we have Kisu and Friends. And then on October 2nd, we've got Paladin Pleasure Sculptors and Phalophile on October 9th. And October 16th is booked, but I'm not entirely sure whether that's going to stay booked or if we're going to rebook somebody or what. So the 16th is still open. And, oh, hey, last chance. Throw the name of a maker or somebody in the toy adjacent category that you would like to see on the show. Throw that into the chat. Throw a couple of them in there. I don't care. But yeah, I put together my list of who I want to bring on. I've got to start booking the November, December, and January. I need to get those booked. So if there's anybody that you would like to see come on the show, then drop their name in the chat and I will add them to my list and check them out. So yeah, those are the guests that we have coming up. We are closing in on the qualifying for the YouTube Partner Program. I think we need another 400 watch hours or something like that. So here in the next month or so, we should be part of the YouTube Partner Program, which only 3% of channels on YouTube ever get into the YouTube Partner Program, and we're going to. I'm amazed again, and this is what adult category, NSFW kind of category, and we're going to get into the YouTube Partner Programs. I feel like we're going to be a little, I don't know what's the word here, what's that? You kind of sneaking in, yeah. Let's see. Prague, order 2 at a time to save shipping. Yep. Because that's Prusament. Which primer do you like to use? I've only found you ever use Rust-Oleum. Yeah. Filler primers are really, really hit and miss. And that's why I started making multiple molds and using plaster. Because plaster sands so well. It sands really easily, and you can very quickly work your way through the grits on plaster. So I don't really have a good suggestion for a filler primer to use. I've never found one that I really liked. So that's kind of why I've been experimenting with different processes. For working with clay, tips for making sure the model can support itself. Okay, that's an interesting topic. I think that clay itself, it depends on the clay. If you're using a very firm clay, or if you're using something that is very soft, you might even use multiple different clays. You might use a very firm clay to build up the core and then use a very soft clay or a softer clay on the outside. I really liked playing with Monster Wax. It's kind of a mix between wax and clay. It literally is a mix of wax and clay, so it actually has properties of both. You can melt it like wax, but it also finishes like clay. Or you're just going to have to work with armatures, and you're going to have to build up a core, which if you're using Sculpey, you should be doing that anyway, because if your Sculpey is too thick and too large, it will want to crack when you fire it in the oven. For 3D printing, tips for making sure that the little strands of plastic don't interrupt. And there's one collector I want an update on. Tell me what you mean by the little strands of plastic don't interrupt. Are you talking about having your filament run out in the middle of the print? I'm not sure. I'm not sure what you mean there. Oh, an update on Penguin. Yeah, Penguin. Penguin After Dark would be an interesting update. Yeah. Ben, you are totally welcome. I'm happy to share as much knowledge as I can. I'm working on all kinds of different ways of sharing that. And like I said, I'm working on a kind of the Dildo Maker's Handbook. I'm working on a course. I'm working on a couple of different things. I keep putting out videos, and you know, I'm happy to share. So yeah, I'm glad you appreciate it. Possibly add a hole to add jewelry to a toy. Going to make first on a toy, and her has a PA. Yeah, you can add jewelry to a toy. I think that once you do that, though, it is going to become art, not necessarily a toy. So, because once you put that piercing through there, then you've created a place for the wee beasties, as I like to call them, yeasts, molds, bacteria, etc., to grow, and that's not a good thing. So you've also compromised the structural integrity of it. So any place where you have cut the material, it's going to want to tear, and it's eventually going to come apart in those areas. So if you do decide to put jewelry on a silicone toy, you can do it. It just becomes art. as opposed to a functional piece. It can be cleaned. You can boil it. You can use bleach water, things like that. But just understand that if you were to go that route, you've compromised the material and you've created a place where the wee beasties can grow. Ishtar, how you doing? So much cool stuff. Yay! Thank you. Great info and interviews. Yeah, I'm happy to help. Could I then make the jewelry as part of the toy, i.e. model it on the toy? Absolutely. I just saw somebody who was doing one. That's another thing I'm going to be doing. I've set myself... Geez, I'm going all over the place now. I saw somebody who just did one that just did a model, and it does have a PA piercing on it, so it can be modeled in. I've seen them. I've seen toys that have piercings modeled in. So you just kind of have to, you have to evoke the idea, not necessarily be literal about the idea. And the reason I say that is that, you know, if you have a PA and as the ring comes around, it necessarily, because of the diameter, is not going to sit flush against the skin. But if you were to do this for a model, then you would want to make sure that ring sits flush against the skin. So again, you're evoking ideas, not necessarily being literal. And by doing it that way, you reduce the chance of that little bit of silicone tearing. And also, if you were to try to model that ring floating free and not sitting against the skin, it would be very difficult to pour that without catching bubbles. So again, you have to kind of take some artistic license with those concepts as you're working with them. Good subject, cleaning. I boil before shipping, considering stopping, as I have noticed it changes the toy physical properties. Yes, warm inside, you're absolutely correct. On the softer silicones, especially near clears, heat does change the firmness. It will generally make silicone firmer. So boiling them, you kind of have to balance between getting it sanitized and not boiling it so long that you affect the material itself. Heat does have a tendency to increase the firmness. Also, I will mention that heat also tends to have an effect on pigments. Not all of them, but some pigments will lose their vibrancy under heat. So that's something else to consider. My tour has a Jacob's ladder piercing. It's really fun to do. Okay. Overhangs are tricky with piercing models. Still got to be printable and pourable. Yeah. If you're doing those models, then yes, you need to be conscious. There are some tricks. I think I got this from Shop Dad. It's very easy if you do a 3D model and you take it into Cheeto Box. And I'll put that in the chat because that's a weird word. Cheeto Box. And then set your supports for 70 degrees. If there's a support there, then you should consider remodeling it slightly, changing the model, because that's the point where you start to have problems with trapping air bubbles and things like that. So it's a quick and easy, quick and dirty way of checking your work to see if your model is going to have any prints. Just grab Cheeto Box. It doesn't have to be 100% scale. You can scale it down to whatever size fits into the Cheeto Box workspace, and just set it flat on the workspace, and then tell it to build supports. And if it builds supports, then you know exactly where you need to adjust your design a little bit. Now then, what I meant to say and what I kind of got distracted from, I've kind of set myself a challenge. I'm going to give myself 24 hours to learn Blender. I hate Blender, and so I'm going to give myself 24 hours to learn it and model a toy that can be printed. So, and then I don't want to say I'm going to film all of it. I'm not going to record all of it, but I'm going to record, the process of learning at least, and kind of work through, okay, this was the first project I did. These are the videos I watched. This is what I was trying to do. And then eventually give myself, 24 hours to actually do something. So, Maggie, you're correct. Not all PA jewelry is a ring. Yes, you could. I've seen various styles. Some of them, they're kind of like plugs with a ball on the side. But yeah, PAs do come in different shapes and sizes. But most people when they think of a PA, they think of a ring. And I assume everybody knows what a PA is. Prince Albert piercing. That's something to Google. I have to try that in the future. Just like small. No islands. Yeah, you don't want any islands. That's the other thing. JA. How often do you apply release to a silicone mold to cast silicone into each time? JA, this was a question that came up earlier, but I'll hit it again. I give my molds a very light spray before every pour, but it's not necessary. You kind of build up seasoning on your mold over time. A very fresh mold, you really want to make sure that you are getting your mold release on there. But after a mold has been used several times, it's not buildup necessarily of mold release on the surface, but the mold has seasoned itself to the point where fresh silicone poured against it is not going to want to stick very easily. And so you can get away with skipping one without putting mold release on it. But yeah, I generally try to put it on every time. But you're not going to kill your mold if you don't. First time I heard of Blender, it was for TF2. Team Fortress, I think that is. Hat models, now it's for toys. Yeah. Yeah, JA. I think we mentioned it fairly early on in the beginning. And I think that, I can't remember if it was Warm Inside or Ben had issues with very fresh molds, having problems with pulling fresh silicone out of them. But once you get a couple of pours in, they become seasoned. I say that, it's kind of like seasoned, kind of like seasoning a cast iron skillet. But yeah. Planning on getting said piercing myself, which I only mentioned because I was talking about it with a buddy and Graham. What piercing are you going to get? When she heard piercing, how do you explain to G-Ma what a PA is? Yeah. All right, everybody, I'm wrapping it up. I went a little bit longer than I expected to, so yeah. Next video I'm going to be kind of working on is my 24-hour Blender challenge. I'm going to give myself 24 hours to learn Blender from scratch. I hate it. So this is going to be me going up against my boundaries because I hate Blender. But so many people use it, so many people ask about it, that I need to have a much better sense of what it is and how it works. And yeah, it'll be fun. But I'm dreading it because I hate Blender. I hate Blender so much. All right, everybody. I'm done. I'm out. We'll be back next weekend. Next weekend is Kizu and Friends, and that will be awesome. I'm glad we're going to get them back in. When they were originally scheduled, they had some bad weather roll through that caused them to lose power, and well, we got them rebooked, and we get to talk to them next week. Yay! All right, everybody. I am done. I am out of here, and we'll do this again next week. Bye.